pics. Sunset, if there's a sunset picture here, I'm sold. Ah. Not really an image, but it's the emoji. I love that. This shows humor as well. Today we're going to be looking at Kimi K2 from Moonshot AI. Now this is a state-of-the-art open source release with 1 trillion parameters, but it is a non-thinking mixture of experts model. So as listed right here in this announcement page for it, it has 32 billion active parameters and 1 trillion total parameters. It achieves state-of-the-art performance in frontier knowledge, and it is optimized for agentic tasks. Now truthfully, I am filming this intro out of order because I have actually gone ahead and played with this model already. I normally film the intros prior to using the models, but I am so impressed with this model's performance that I've actually come back to film this again, because truthfully, I can comfortably say that this is likely the most impressive open source model that I've ever played with. Period. Now, there are a few things that I know folks will have specific questions about pertaining to the actual release of this model, and probably one of the most common ones would be, what would it take to actually run this locally? Unfortunately, that is one of the downsides of this model, where if we go into the docs right here in the GitHub page for this model, there is a deployment guide where they mention that to use this with a 128,000 sequence length, you need an H200 or H20 platform with 16 GPUs. So the downside of this model is that folks like myself who are hobbyists are likely going to be limited to playing with it using the web interface or some other way of doing it aside from using our own GPUs. However, this model does have some, it's just really good. That's why I'm filming this intro again, because I want to spend time on this video actually just showing the insane results that were generated with this, as opposed to looking too much at the tech specs. In terms of the technical interests and things like that, the research paper is not out yet, but they do mention here that they are using the Muon clip optimizer as opposed to the commonly found widely used AdamW optimizer for LLM training. These are just kind of things that you may or may not be familiar with hearing if you've played with like the Nano GPT repository or other beginner experiments. You may be somewhat familiar with this terminology right here, and they do kind of have this graph here, which is just kind of like, hey. So it performs very well, and it is supposedly very good at agentic capabilities and tool use and things of that sort. Now, if we want to just go ahead and actually specifically look at the license to see how open source this is, we see it has a modified MIT license where it seems relatively open source, and the only modification is that if the software or any derivative is used for commercial products or services that have more than 100 million monthly active users or more than 20 million US dollars in monthly revenue, you need to prominently display Kimi K2 on the UI. So other than that, it is pretty open. And if we go ahead and just peek at the actual Hugging Face model card for this right here, we can see that they do have a little model summary where it has a context length of 128K, 1 trillion total parameters, 32 billion active parameters, and it is a mixture of experts model. Beyond that here, it is fairly light, and there is just a bunch of kind of charts and benchmarks and things like that. So with that, and being that there is no currently linked paper, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into testing this fantastic model. So for the first test, I would like to just go ahead and ask it to generate a simple HTML script. So no, I'm kidding. We'll do something slightly more intricate. So all we're doing here is just really simple 1-sentence prompt, which is something that I have done prior to this with a lot of other strong and more state-of-the-art models, which is basically using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, make a browser-based operating system. So right here, it is just starting out by telling us the 3 separate files that it is going to generate for us and how to actually go ahead and run them, which is nice to see. So that is interesting. I don't know that I've seen a lot of models when I task them with this actually go ahead and first and foremost list out the files that it is going to generate and where to place them, almost as if it kind of knew what it was going to do prior to actually generating any of the scripts. So I will say that is just interesting from a planning perspective, where it kind of already knew like, okay, index operating system.js and then operating system.css is what I'm going to make. A lot of times they start out by just kind of making these scripts, and then this would basically be one of the last things that we see generated. So that is kind of interesting, and we can kind of see it going here. Obviously, this is their own chat interface online just through kimi.com, and basically all I've done here is just sign up with Google. So this is like a burner Google account that I'm using right here. I'm not super in tune with like any usage limits or things like that, but for a vibe test video today, we should be good to go. It has now concluded with the script generation and is just going ahead and kind of giving us suggestions on how to further and like expand this if we wanted to. Interesting. The entire thing is around 250 lines and 100% standards compliant. Enjoy hacking your own browser-based operating system. All right. That was kind of like a nice little garnish to the dish, if you will. So I will just go ahead and place these files in their respective locations, and we'll take a peek at what we get. Now I will use Chrome to test anything that is kind of web-based, as I don't have any extensions in there or anything like that. So, whoa, look at that background. We have a start menu there with a, is that a window emoji? I think it might be. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that is a window emoji next to the start menu, which is a nice touch. I suppose that is very browser-like. We do have a functioning clock that is even showing us seconds, so that is a nice touch. We have this interesting, almost Connect 4 looking background, which is, you know, something. So, all right, let's just go ahead and click on the start menu. Very good. Okay, so that is definitely a Windows emoji. We'll just kind of ignore that. The abacus emoji is used for the calculator. I like this. Terminal is a computer emoji. Text editor is a notepad emoji. And File Explorer is a file explorer emoji. Terminal. This is very good. This is extremely good. Now, okay, yep, we can move windows. Can we resize them too? All right, doesn't seem like we can, but that's okay. Let's type a command, ls, unknown command. Okay, that's fine. What would be like a super generic command that it might know? Oh, I screwed that up. Okay, sorry. I'm not too, I can't, oh, it's this weird little like micro keyboard. The tilde doesn't work properly. Apologize for that. Okay, let me see. All right, well, okay, let's explore others and we'll go back to the terminal. Let's do the calculator. 4 times 832, quite good, times 7, 240 something, 224, yeah. So this is actually working pretty well. Let's do something that is not going to be an even number result. Let's do 88 divided by 9. All right, we'll take its word for that. Seems fairly good. And this we can move around as well. Let's see if we can multi-tap. So can we open multiple windows at the same time? Yes, we can. What happens when they collide? Okay, it just goes over it. So this one goes over that one there. If I am to move this one, let's see if it goes. I know that seems like a really silly, stupid thing that I'm trying to make note of, but it does actually show like some intricate level of decent quality code that was generated here. All right, so we can. Let's check out our text editor. Hi. Let's see if the scroll bar would work if I just like type a bunch of. Yep, it does. Okay, very cool. And if we are to move this around, this result is very, very, very well done, I will say. Let's check the final one that we have not yet looked at, which would be the File Explorer. Path, welcome.txt, and pics. Welcome to Browser OS. Beautiful. And I clicked it twice and it opened it twice. Pics, sunset. If there's a sunset picture here, I'm sold. Ah. Not really an image, but it's the emoji. I love that. This shows humor as well. Not really an image, but it is an emoji. Normally, I would do like a multi-shot style thing here where I'd be like, okay, well, it generated this, but like this was kind of crap, so let's go ahead and ask it to do that. I don't have any criticisms here. I suppose writing out like large lists of critiques is not my strong point, but this is really quite impressive. I don't really know what else to say for this, but I am just going to kind of keep it open and running in the background here. This is really quite well done. The background is obscure, but I suppose it does do a better job of immersion than just like a blank color in the background. And again, I can't get over the Windows emoji next to the start button. It does seem like this model may be a little funny as well, which I would like to perhaps do some testing on. Now, I want to make note of something because I was really impressed with the previously generated browser operating system, but there is actually a whole nother page here on like the blog post for Kimi K2, just in a nice manner. They do mention here all the way at the bottom that when building complete software projects, one-shot prompting yields performance degradation compared to using K2 under an agentic framework. So essentially what that means is the test we just did that really came out fantastically could hypothetically be considered to have degraded performance as opposed to using this in some form of like agentic coding framework or something of the sort. So this is really quite impressive, especially considering, and I suppose I should quickly just kind of touch upon this little documentation here as well, as they do show some further example use cases just about this thing actually using tools, where essentially it understands how to use tools and get the job done. You don't have to really specifically write any complex workflows for agentic applications, as denoted by this salary data analysis example. Now, truthfully, I don't like testing things like this because I find this incredibly boring and like, you know, I probably don't have to extrapolate what I mean by that, but this is just a quick example of it actually going ahead and figuring out what tools and what methodologies to go about using to actually do this. In addition to that, I think if we scroll down, this seems very interesting where they've had it do a JavaScript Minecraft, and the result is like, I mean, I don't have words for this result. This is unreal. And again, I am cautious to like show this in the video because this is not something we tried together online using the web interface. This is a cherry-picked example result designed to make the model look its best. But with that, I mean, and they show that here through a terminal. So basically the actual prompting here would be just kind of like this. So again, this model seems really quite impressive, but I did just want to make note of that little snippet down here where it's like not necessarily the best performance when doing one-shot prompting, which is what I do a lot of. So with that, I am very interested in its graphical capabilities here just based off of this JavaScript test. So being influenced by this kind of Minecraft result right here, and then keeping in mind that this isn't going to be at peak performance, perhaps just using it this way, I have gone ahead and just written up a little prompt basically asking it to make a 3D racing game where it is a POV of a driver and they're going around a track and there is a competitor's car right here. So this is right now just going ahead and generating an HTML file off the bat. It is calling it low poly 3D racing. It didn't do what it did previously with the browser-based OS where it went ahead and kind of already knew what scripts it was going to generate. So with this, we're basically just going to go ahead and allow it to do its thing and we'll see the result. We will use Chrome. Holy wow. I haven't even, all right, let's see what happens. Also, it didn't tell me anything about how to control it, so I'll assume arrow keys. Oh, it says it right there. All right. Okay, so first thing I'm going to note is the arrow keys are inverted. Oh no, I'm going in reverse. Okay, so it's a little, look at that. I need a moment to gather myself before I can speak authoritatively on this result. Okay, so I am perhaps ready to speak about this. First and foremost, obviously, look at the actual simple map that it generated, absolutely fitting the low poly style as kind of denoted by the shape of the rocks, the greenery, the general color palette that was used. In addition to that, I love the kind of glowing neon green around the actual UI elements and things like that. We do have a position, what lap we're on, as well as the time that we are going. So there is even a mini map, which seems to only update once we have stopped moving, but that's okay. And again, it's not a perfectly functioning result. However, this is really quite good. If I were to be nitpicking and start and going ahead and being negative, I am actually pressing the forward. So I'm pressing the W key right here, which would generally make us go forward. But when I do this, it seems like the camera is just kind of facing the wrong direction. So it almost seems like it put the driver camera as if the driver was looking out the back window of the car. So when I actually try to move forward here, we can see the speed is negative. Now, something I will say that is interesting attention to detail and just like shows a general level of world knowledge is if we go maximum speed in what is reverse, even though it looks like we're moving forward, we are limited to 75 kilometers per hour, but the maximum speed in forward gear, oh, I finished, is 150. So it actually knew enough to know that a car has a much lower top speed in reverse than it does in forward. That's just general knowledge. It does actually have some level of victory, some level of gameplay logic where it showed that I won. I don't know. Look at the hover effect on the button here. Now this, I will say, is giving me almost vibes like the GLM family of models, which was so good at doing UX and UI design. This reminds me similar to it, just with the gameplay UI that it generated. Space to brake. So, and again, it's not like 100%, and I don't see the opponent, which is kind of maybe a negative here, obviously, but this is something that could be given multiple chances to go ahead and remedy itself, and I do believe I will actually go ahead and do that now. Since this is such a promising result, I would like to see its ability to kind of fix some of these issues that we've noticed. I'm just giving it a really simple summary of the issues, as I don't really know what the usage limits and things like this are here. And again, it is just kind of going ahead and generating the prompt, not saying anything. So let's go ahead and we will see if this actually fixes this, and hopefully it does. All right, start race. Okay, we do have a simple dashboard here now, although it is kind of overlaid over the instructions. Let's see, first and foremost, the biggest issue was that going forward didn't go forward. Okay, so that is unfortunately still an issue, so it didn't fix that. The little RPM gauge there is quite cool. The only other issue that we had was that the opponent did not actually show up, so that is partially fixed, as we can see that the opponent is there, although they do seem to have like a, I'm not quite sure how one would describe what we're seeing. It did fix certain elements, but not entirely. Though I will say, actually, is that, so it seems like the rocks are, it seems, the opponent got stuck. Again, I don't have a whole lot to say, I guess, about this second iteration. It does seem like it did actually put boundaries on the track. So it seems like the opponent is just hitting a boundary and just keep trying to go forward. So that's what's causing the stuttering there, which would make some level of sense. Now, okay, the perhaps pathfinding of the AI opponent is not the best. Overall, this result is really fantastic. It has a mini map. It has the thing right here. I mean, very, very, very well done. I will be putting this up on Steam for $9.99 for anyone who wants. I'm kidding. All right. Super simple, but basically saying make a drum set that is web-based, and essentially when the user clicks on any piece of the drum, it will go ahead and make the sound that corresponds with that piece of the drum. Now, this was somewhat intentionally vague, where I want to see how well it abstracts what piece of the drum makes what sound based off of its general knowledge. Now, it is an MOE model, so again, it's using specific experts for each request, and that is why I kind of like keeping it vague a little to test its, I suppose, domain knowledge in different areas, but still in a coding task, if that makes any sense, where essentially it will need to know the actual like layout and sound style of a drum set so that it knows which specific drum makes what tone or something like that, like the cymbals, the toms, the hi-hats, etc., if that makes any level of sense. All right, we have our drum game ready, so let's just go ahead and see how it does, which would denote a successful result. So, oh my. All right, let's, oh. And it even mapped it to the keyboard so we can actually play with it, which is cool because obviously using a mouse, you can only do so much. So unfortunately, I actually can't hear anything. So 1 second. So graphically, this result was not the best. However, musically, quite all right. So overall, a relatively decent result, at least in terms of a one-shot prompt. It is not necessarily graphically the best. I was kind of more thinking of like the Logic Pro or GarageBand looking kind of drum setup, but it's a web result, and yeah. This is probably a very, very difficult task that I don't know if I would really bet on any one existing model being capable of doing, especially in one shot. But I have asked it to go ahead and generate a web-based digital audio workstation that a user can go ahead and use to make electronic music. So right now, all right, it is going ahead and planning out. Unfortunately, the the code is not being generated within the kind of code block. We'll see what happens. All right, our final test of this wonderful model. All right, let's see. I don't know how to use this, but that's okay. Damn. And you can actually manually add it in too, so. Ooh. All right, I'm just like, I don't have words because this is so good. Let's drop this. That's beautiful. Yeah, I don't really have much to say. This is really, really quite good. And just like, I'm honestly more impressed with myself for coming up with such a fantastic test. But aside from that, all right, I gotta get out of here. I'm going to a social event. So with that, that is going to really conclude the testing of Kimi K2. I will say, I am going to go ahead and make this claim that this is by far the finest open source model that I have tested to date. I don't even think it's close based off of some of the things that I saw here today. Unfortunately, the downside of this being so good is that it is very unlikely for most of us hobbyists to be able to run this locally. But just looking at this as a step forward, I mean, I have no ability to speak about like the upcoming releases from more frontier labs that are supposedly going to be open source. But if I saw this and I was about to release a model, I probably may rethink it depending on the capabilities of my own model. I mean, the results, I have some of them open right here. The browser OS was fantastic and also kind of hilarious, like the sunset image, the humor that was injected here. This thing I'm enamored with. I kind of want to just play with this all night. The drum set was interesting, and we did a race car game as well. So overall, Kimi K2 is fantastic. That's really all I have to say about this. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.